Welcome back to the Casual GM Podcast. I'm your host, Drew, and alongside me, as always, my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Just as handsome as ever, Drew. How about yourself?
I believe that's the second or third time in a row that you've opened like that. Is that going to be your official sign-on, do you think?
Probably. Yeah. I can't help it. I mean,
Classic.
You got it.
Classic.
It's a burden, but somebody's got to carry it.
You've got the shoulders for it. You can carry that burden for all of us, I think. So good job, Mike. Thank you.
Anytime.
Yeah, and so just kind of give a quick hit here on who we are and what we're about. We are casual fans and are looking at roster building in the NFL through the lens of the Detroit Lions and their current team. And so we are trying to apply new and different philosophies on team building to the Detroit Lions to see if the team does any of the things that we think they should or suggest, and I guess B, what direction they're actually taking now and in the future. So toward that end, we are going to be taking a sneak peek today at what we think the 53-man roster will be week 1 in the 2022 NFL season. So, but before we get to that, if there's anybody in the chat who wants to throw out a question or a topic of discussion, this is, I think, going to become a time for us to really interact with you guys on a more personal level, get you guys more involved in the actual discussion. So if you're in the chat, feel free to go ahead and throw out some Q&A. That would be great. So doesn't look like we have anybody in there right now, but we just started. So
it's early.
It's early. Well, we have a couple dedicated listeners.
So one thing I will note, though, is as we do talk about roster construction and decisions that need to be made, whether it's a trade, unrestricted free agent, draft pick, whatever it is, cuts, we're going to be looking really closely at the salary cap. And how does that affect decisions, as well as we make these decisions? We're going to be looking really close at the analytics. What do the statistics tell us? My opinion isn't necessarily reality, but the data around it, we can draw reality from. So right. I may like a guy, but if the statistics and the analysis shows that they're underperforming, then they're probably underperforming, whether I want to admit to it or not. And we're going to use a bunch of different tools for that. PFF is a great one. NFL teams use it. NFL head coaches use it. If it's good enough for a guy like Sean McVay, because he's talked about it on his podcast, it's good enough for me. So,
and you listen to you listen to his podcast, don't you, Mike? What is that?
It was good. It was called Flying Coach, and it was a podcast last season was run by Adam Schefter, and I guess Schefter and McVay are really good friends. And that's where they interviewed a bunch of other head coaches. Kingsbury, I'm drawing a blank. Kyle Shanahan, I guess they're really good friends. Oh my God, it's a riot. I would highly recommend.
Well, they used to work on the old Washington staff together, I believe. Shanahan and McVay.
Yep, and then
Kingsbury too. No,
Kingsbury as well. The coach in Green Bay.
Oh yeah,
Matt something. They interviewed him. Great. It was a lot of fun. The first season was hosted by a couple of the basketball head coaches. Steve Kerr
from the Warriors, and
then the other one wasn't a basketball coach. It was the Seattle Seahawks coach,
Pete Carroll.
Yes, Carroll. That was really good too. They tackled a lot of topics. Highly recommend.
Cool.
But yeah.
One Pride has joined us in the chat.
One Pride, what's up, dog?
What Pride? Do you have any questions or things you'd like to see discussed in today's episode? We're kind of taking some more Q&A from the chat if you want to become involved. So if you've got something you'd like us to chat about for a couple minutes or a question, feel free to throw it in the chat real quick. But I listened to a couple episodes of that podcast too, Mike. It's really interesting, and I think it's a good thing to do, to listen to not only the viewpoint of like an NFL GM or head coach, but like coaches in general. Like, there is certainly an overlay of what coaching on a professional level in sports, what those people have to deal with on a day in, day out kind of basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that like broadening your perspective and like getting information right from like their sources and talking about their issues and how they see things is very, very valuable.
Yeah,
So
they talked about a lot of things I never would have guessed. There were some really good questions because they had a Q&A session as well toward the end that some of the fans brought in. Rumble's in the house.
Uh-oh. Hey, Rumble.
Depending on the season, going to see
Holmes making a trade for a linebacker. That's an interesting topic. So I do think that the linebacker position, besides QB, what is our biggest need? That's a good question too. So I would say that I think that the unit that has the most to overhaul on the roster currently is the linebacker unit, top to bottom. I would like to see guys like, we're going to be talking about this here in a little while. Hey, Rumble, if you have any questions, throw them out in the chat. Okay, Rumble. I would start Chris Board and Malcolm Rodriguez right out the gate, the two new additions, and have Anzalone be the primary third linebacker or backup to those guys. Would they make a trade? I think that would depend on a couple of things. I think that would depend on, is someone becoming available? Is there an issue with them on their current staff? Is there a team that had playoff aspirations and they don't get started out of the gates the way that they want to, and they're looking to like blow it up midseason kind of a situation? Like, could you see something like that? If the opportunity became available, I would want them to explore it. And if it did become available, then it just becomes a matter of cost. So if it's like you have to pay out a first round pick and then sign a guy to like a $50 million contract or something to that effect, I would probably be less excited about it. But if it was like an established vet that had worked with Brad Holmes or Dan Campbell before, and you could get him at a reasonable cost, absolutely, I would consider bringing in a linebacker for this unit. Especially if the Lions are in like playing like meaningful games and being in contention for either the division or a wild card spot. I think there's a lot of factors, but yeah, certainly don't rule it out.
Yeah, besides quarterback, our biggest need is probably the linebacking core, right?
I mean, like, as I look over the team, if we're excluding quarterback, which I would say until they have a top 8-10 quarterback, I would say is probably going to be a need.
I will say the unspoken note here is quarterback is our biggest need.
Right.
That's the unspoken portion of this question.
I would love to see this roster with a top 10 quarterback on it. I think that, I mean, like, I know the Matthew Stafford trade is kind of what kicked off this new regime, because he was only in the front office for 2 weeks before they actually got the trade request from Stafford. But if they could bring in Shaq Thompson for a 5th round pick, I would do that. A 5th round pick. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like, where are the Lions going to invest draft resources, even starting in this next class? You still have their pick and the Rams pick in this upcoming class, and they have a 6th round pick from the Trinity Benson trade in 2021. So they are entering this season, or this draft in 2023, with 9 picks, I believe. They're not projected to get any comp picks in this particular class. So unless they somehow go out and trade players for picks or something, I don't know how they're going to get any more. Now that's 9 picks is a good amount. So, you've drafted extremely heavily along your lines the last 2 seasons. Like, if you're not going to invest in the back seven in this upcoming class or quarterback, I don't know where you would invest. So if you want to spend a 5th rounder on Shaq Thompson, seems like a valuable addition to me. I would have no problem with that. But yeah, I would say the back seven is the weakest area of the team, and linebacker is probably the weakest spot inside that area of the defense. So what about you, Mike? What do you think?
I mean, I think our linebacking core is probably the weakest entire room, per se. We could probably use another safety. And the real question, I don't think it's going to be answered until we get halfway through the season. And the reason for that is, does Oruwariye keep it up? Does Okudah stay healthy? Like, what happens to those young guys in the cornerbacks? So if Okudah gets hurt again, Oruwariye takes a step back, maybe the cornerback is actually our biggest need for an overhaul. So I think right now the answer is linebacker, just because I'm optimistic to a fault, and I think that Okudah is going to stay healthy and all those kinds of things that have never happened in the past.
Right.
But until that's happened, I think linebacker is where we need to go, and then we can see how those corners hold up throughout the year.
Okay. Yeah, I do see I happen to think that the Panthers are a little bit better than they've been given credit for. They have Ekwonu and Moton now on the interior of on their offensive line. I think I am higher on Baker Mayfield than most people. I think DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Christian McCaffrey make a pretty good skill position group, and I think that their defense is solid. You have Brian Burns, J.C. Horn. I wouldn't say Derek Brown is somebody, but they have a safety that I really like. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. Jeremy Chin, I think his name is. They have some pieces there. I think there's reason to say, if you were a Panthers fan, that there's some hope this season. I don't think that they're very good at all, but I think they're better than, some people have them in the running for the number 1 overall pick. I don't see that.
The Bears say not so fast. That's ours.
Right. Yeah. The Bears, I think the Bears are the worst team in football.
And Houston's going, it might be us.
Oh, I think Houston is deceptively good. I think they added Derek Stingley Jr. to their back seven. And I cannot remember the other. Oh, they added a guard. So I think that they're making incremental improvements. I liked what I saw from Davis Mills in the last half of the year for them, and I think he's going to get a chance to be the starter full time for Houston. And their division is terrible. They have the Jaguars. They have. I think the Colts are pretty good, and I think the Titans will regress. So I think that they have an opportunity to steal a game here and there. So I think that they are near the bottom, but not at the bottom. I think Chicago is very clearly the bottom of the NFL, followed by Seattle. So Seattle is bad in a good division, and that's about the worst thing that you could have happen to you in the NFL. So I would not trade for a running back. Because I'm so low on running backs in general, and we're going to talk about those a little bit when we get into the 53-man roster talk. I have kind of a surprise on what running backs I would keep on the roster. I like Jeremy Chin a lot. He's good. So
which team do we think is going to be in fire sale mode?
Fire sale. So that would be a team that had some kind of aspiration, who just decides that I think the best trade chip in the NFL right now is Jimmy Garoppolo, but there's no buyer. So the only 2 buyers I could really see for Jimmy Garoppolo are the Seahawks, because it's Drew Lock and Geno Smith, and oddly enough, Cleveland, because they're going to be starting Jacoby Brissett.
True. Yeah.
And
they're not going to send them to Seattle.
I would highly doubt that they trade a quarterback. I mean, that would be an absolute admonishment of Jimmy Garoppolo if you are saying we're going to trade you to a team that we're going to play twice a year. Like, that would be like, we don't think much of you at all, in my opinion.
And you're going to hedge your bets, right?
Sure.
There's no reason to trade in division if you can help it.
You know, and from what I've heard about Garoppolo, like if it was up to the players, he'd be the quarterback.
Yeah,
he seems to be very well liked. I've also heard that Tampa Bay would be willing to trade for him because they are anticipating this being the last year of Tom Brady, and he's enough like Tom Brady and has that New England connection.
He's done it before. He was
why not?
Yeah, in the past.
That's the NFL's curse, right? Is they think they can recreate what New England has created in every facet of their football organization.
We tried that and it wrecked us.
Minnesota is not a bad option for a fire sale. They are extremely close to the cap, and they are going to need to figure out how they are going to pay Justin Jefferson, because he's possibly the best wide receiver in the NFL. Their defense is a mess, although they've invested in the back seven, especially in the this last draft. Adam Thielen, how old is Adam Thielen here? He is 32. So, and he is going to be making only $11 million this year, but then it goes up to $19 million in his age 33 season and $21 million in his age 34 season before he gets so his contract is ascending. They'll pick up the third-year option on Justin Jefferson this year. He'll make, if he hasn't already, he'll make a Pro Bowl. So his fifth-year option will be roughly either the franchise tender, or the franchise tag. You still have Harrison Smith. Their offensive line has gotten better. I'll give them that. But like I think their big problem is like they are holding on to, and we talked a little bit about this last week. They are holding on to players who are either at their prime or past their prime, and you're paying them as if they are coming into their prime. Kirk Cousins, Daniel Hunter, guys like this. So I would, if you have a solid foundation with superstar players like Justin Jefferson, and I love Dalvin Cook as a running back, I think you make incremental additions to the offensive line. You start your new quarterback search. So I could see them, if someone went down and they're like, hey, we'll be willing to trade Kirk Cousins after the season, I think that's a possibility. So yeah, I guess Minnesota would be an option. I don't think the Commanders, One Pride, would be somebody that would go into fire sale mode. Like, they have a lot of young guys, especially on their defense, and I think they've made good investments at the right places in their offense. Terry McLaurin being the one that I think is probably their best investment, and I think that they're not many players away from like contending in that division to win that division. I of course think that Carson Wentz is a laughable starting quarterback in the NFL at this point. I feel bad for him because he had his like a really good year, and then he got like the yips or whatever, and then just forgot how to play the position, and then he has just been trying to get back to form ever since.
He might be a target for Garoppolo. I mean,
that's in all actuality. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, so like the Washington Commanders quarterback room right now is Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, and Sam Howell. I would love it if Taylor Heineke or Sam Howell was the backup in Detroit. So I don't know. We'll see
what they cost.
Exactly.
Howell's going to be cheap, right? But Heineke probably isn't yet.
He's right on the borderline of being like, either he's a career backup or he's a potential starter. Like, in the right situation, he might be capable of starting in the NFL. Like, he has certainly had flashes. I think like some continuity would be a big help for him, and being, and of course, as we've heard with Jared Goff, being on a better team, like it just helps everybody when you're on a better team.
So do you think that it would be wise? So they drafted Sam Howell. What was it, last year or the year before?
It was this last draft, 2022.
Yeah, so they've got Sam Howell, a potential quarterback of the future. Would it make sense to trade for a bridge quarterback like a Garoppolo, knowing that you've got this guy, let him learn behind a guy like Garoppolo that buys him next year or two? Maybe you extend Garoppolo a year. Maybe a guy like Kirk Cousins if they're wanting to move on.
Have him come back to Washington. That'd be fun.
That'd be hilarious, right? Under new management, kind of thing. But like one of those kind of, does it ever make sense to trade for a bridge when you have a potential quarterback of the future on there? Or do you just say, you know what, he can learn behind whatever person we've got, and then he'll just take it, or we just throw him in like a lot of, like we did with Stafford and a bunch of others that just get drafted and start right away? Like, do you draft for a bridge? Or I'm sorry, do you trade for a bridge?
So I think that the old adage is true. Like if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any, or if you don't know who your quarterback is, you're not done looking or whatever, something like that. I think that teams don't want to be bad.
Right.
And I think that desire to not be bad will lead a lot of teams, most teams, to part with something like in a draft pick where you just don't know who that guy is going to be for something that you're a little bit more certain of. So like if I was Washington and we start out 1-5 or 2-6 or something like that, and Garoppolo is still on the roster, yeah, I would trade to go get Jimmy Garoppolo to try and salvage the season. Maybe not even from a wins and losses perspective, but like as a statement to the team that it's like, we tried this, it didn't work. We had to try long enough to make sure it wasn't going to work. Now we're going to continue to invest to make sure that we're not just wasting your guys' prime years. Like,
right.
They are not going to be able to pay Daron Payne, right? He is one of their better interior defensive linemen. They're going to have to let him go because they are going to have to pay Chase Young and Montez Sweat because they are edge rushers and not defensive tackles. Like, they drafted a linebacker in round 1 who barely made their roster. Like they signed a William Bates. They signed William Bates from the Cincinnati Bengals last offseason to come in and play for them, and he was serviceable, but like they lost Brandon Scherf on their O-line, but they drafted Sam Cosmi, I believe, to come in there and play. So like I think that they are quote unquote like treading water pretty effectively, but I think that you're probably going to need to do something in order to push that team forward. The only way I think that Sam Howell would become the quarterback of that team is if there were injuries to both Wentz and Heineke.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way he could potentially play this year. Now Heineke might leave in free agency. They might cut Wentz or trade for another guy, and that might let Howell move up in the pecking order. But I don't see a way that he outplays his way to being a starter. I'm not sure what this question means, but why just wait for a 23?
Why not wait? And so why trade for a bridge quarterback when we can wait for a 2023 quarterback in the draft, is my guess.
For Washington?
That's probably more theoretical. Maybe not for them because they already potentially have a quarterback of their future with Howell, but other teams that Seattle, for example.
So if it was me, I don't have any problem if I was the GM being like, we're just going to wait till next season to go after this resource because we don't have the opportunity to acquire one right now. So I'm a little bit more patient when it comes to like trying to find these opportunities to add players of significant value to the roster, and I would think that other teams would be, in similar positions. But I mean, it's not my job on the line. No matter how much I agree or disagree with that approach, like people are going to make moves, whether they're good or bad, to try and save their jobs. So a lot of people don't have what the Lions have, which is like a commitment to the long term to rebuild this roster into something respectable. So I think that a lot of people feel like they're not in a position where they can wait, and I think that leads them to making ultimately poor decisions. But yeah, I think that this next year's quarterback class, if 3/4 of the prospects come out that are projected to come out, will be a infinitely better class than we had last year, which might be the worst class we've seen in memory. So
yeah,
Dion Jones. I don't know about Dion Jones. I've never been a huge fan. If he's available, I mean, I would explore it. I mean, like I was willing to sit down and have a conversation, and I thought that the Lions should about trading for Mayfield just to be a backup for a number of reasons. And I think that they should listen to, I mean, if there's a trade offer out there for Vita, I think they should listen to that too. So for various reasons. So not that they just have to do those trades because they're out there, but they should discuss them, as realistic opportunities to make the team better. So let's see. So the reason that I like Levis from Kentucky as the guy that I've kind of pigeonholed in for the Lions right now is that it seems like the fan base is on board with him. I like what he does. He's very well rounded. He's mobile. He's big. From what I've seen, he doesn't have a great arm, but he has a good arm when it comes to like pushing the ball downfield. I think that no matter who the Lions have, if they decide to move on from Jared Goff, if that quarterback cannot effectively push the ball downfield, they've made the wrong choice.
Yeah.
So with Jameson Williams,
better be a damn good runner.
Yeah, I mean, like what I like about Will Levis is size. He's a team captain, which means I think that the Lions will move him up on their internal draft board because they seem to really enjoy team captains.
Well, I mean, it goes to show like the leadership that he's got and the fact that if he's a team captain, especially if it's, I know in the pros, the team captains are voted on by the players. They're not by the coaching staff. I think college is the same way. And if that's the case, then it shows a lot how much he can quickly get guys to follow him. And that's what you need in a quarterback is you need someone that can go on the field and everybody knows this is my guy. I'm following him. I believe in him. And that's important when you have that. So it makes complete sense to make team captaincy a kind of important evaluation criteria.
Yeah, one pride. If you look up Will Levis highlights, he trucks dudes on a regular basis in the running game. Like he is a physical runner. I like him. I think that he's a good quarterback. I wouldn't mind seeing the Lions take him. Tyler Van Dyke is another quarterback that I think will be available when they are going to be picking in the draft. So yeah, we'll just have to keep our ear to the ground, so to speak, because this might be the year where you quote unquote need to at least add a quarterback into the mix. So
yeah,
we'll see. All right, Mike, shall we move into our main topic?
We shall. Let's do it. Not that you guys can't keep commenting and making notes and asking questions throughout this the first look at the roster. I'm assuming you're probably going to share a screen here shortly.
Oh no, actually, I wrote them all down on a piece of paper. So at work.
Wow, well done. I just assumed that it was either in your noggin or on a screen.
I threw you a curveball this time. Sorry. So So, Mike, I've
You
got
paid me enough for this.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're not paid. You're not. I'm certainly not paid enough. That's for certain. I have my 53-man roster. I've broken it down by position group. So,
Okay.
do you want to go like I do a position group and then you do a position group, the same one, and we talk about it, or do you want me to go through the whole thing and then you go through the whole thing? What do you want to do?
I think it's going to be easier if we had a depth chart that we can kind of just take a look at online. So let me find that while you start. I'll let you start with the quarterback room.
Okay. Okay. So I am keeping 3 quarterbacks on the roster. Unshockingly, and I tried to keep my lists in position by like depth. Like I would say, like this guy's the starter, this guy's the backup, this guy's the third stringer, that kind of thing, as much as I could. So I've got Goff, Boyle, Blau, same 3 that we had last year, no changes.
That sounds pretty good. I'm
remarkably unspectacular. Oh, look, Golf.
Hey, let's make this a little bit bigger so people can actually read it.
That's pretty good.
All right. So you have Goff, Blau, Boyle?
I have Boyle and Blau the other way, but yes, same 3 players.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And honestly, if we're talking about who's making the 53-man roster, I don't think we keep 3 quarterbacks.
Well, maybe we did last year. So, or Blau was on the practice squad. However that breaks
one
down.
being on the practice squad.
Sure.
But I think it's a waste of a 53rd man.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I agree. Like if you're in a position where it's like, we're down a guy. Like if you're down a guy and you have your game in a week, you should be able to go out and sign a journeyman to come in for you, right? Like, so having 2 backups on a week-to-week basis might be a little expensive, but I have some version of these 3 guys at that position. Now, this is my first departure from conventional wisdom. So I'm keeping the guys on this roster, not that I think that the Lions will keep, but that if I was the GM, would keep. Okay.
Yep.
So if I move over to running back, I would keep Swift, I would keep Craig Reynolds, and I would keep Jamar Jefferson. And I would cut Jamal Williams. And why would I do that? Because you can save $3 million by cutting Jamal Williams. And I don't know that like the difference between Jamal Williams and Craig Reynolds is so great that I should keep him on the roster. And like we did spend a 7th round pick on Jamar Jefferson. Let's give that guy some run.
Yep. I agree.
And then the other guy here that I kept on the roster solely for money reasons is Kabinda. I don't know what he's a fullback / tight end or what have you. When I got done making the roster, I had 48 guys that I wanted on the team, and I had 5 spots. And I kept Kabinda on there because he was the most expensive guy to get rid of the 5 players that I ended up keeping. And that's the sole reason that he's on the team. So basically, the only difference, I guess, between my thinking and other people's thinking, Mike, is that I would get rid of Jamal Williams. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I would honestly, I was really excited when we drafted Jamar Jefferson. He did a lot in college, played really well. I think he was at a smaller school, so it wasn't like he was playing with Alabama or Ohio State or, one of these top schools.
Factories.
Yeah, exactly. So I would like to see him honestly in the 2nd spot over Craig Reynolds. I think he's got more potential.
Well, I like the way that Reynolds played last season, so I think that I would give him the odds. But there's going to be carries available, I think, for Oregon State. He was a Beaver.
Yep.
Hopefully, soon to be Big Ten Oregon State.
No, are you thinking Oregon or Oregon State?
It says Oregon State.
Right, but you want Oregon State in the Big Ten?
Why wouldn't I? Because we'll get Oregon. Here are the teams I would love to have in the Big Ten: Notre Dame, Clemson, FSU, Oregon, Washington. And if you need to bring in Washington State and Oregon State so that those two schools can keep their like rivalry games or whatever, the more the merrier.
That's fair. Luke G's in the house.
He is. Welcome, Luke.
He asked why to get rid of Williams and money. Money.
It's just I am a big believer in the it depends on if they keep Jared Goff on the roster. One pride, like if they draft Will Levis and they decide to keep Jared Goff on the roster, I would probably start Jared Goff. If they draft a quarterback and either trade or cut Jared Goff, I would then of course start the rookie. So why Clemson? Because they're a national powerhouse, and I don't want them to go to the SEC and give them more amazing teams. So, okay, well, let's move on to wide receiver. My wide receivers that I would keep on this roster, unsurprisingly, are Jameson Williams, DJ Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and those are my top 3 wide receivers on the team. Like when they're all healthy and playing together, I would like to see those 3 guys out there at the same time. Yep. My 3 backups also I don't think are going to be any surprise. I would keep Josh Reynolds, Quentin Cephas, and Khalif Raymond.
Yep, that's what they've got as well. I mean, Reynolds is okay. He's serviceable. I mean, he was sitting on his on his couch for half of last season. There was a reason for that. And I don't remember what his salary was.
Josh Reynolds, we redid his contract. They gave him a new deal this season, so I believe he makes $2 million this year, but he makes $4 million next year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, $2 million is his cap hit this year.
Yeah, so that's not terrible. If we don't gain anything by cutting him, then definitely keep him. But I was not super impressed. I mean, he did okay. He was serviceable, but again, there was a reason why he was sitting on his couch for half a season.
You know, and here's the fun thing: if you go into the 2023 season with both Reynolds and Chark on the roster, they cost almost exactly the same.
But one's going to have slightly different production than the other, though.
I would imagine one's a 4-3 guy and the other one is not. So
great.
Moving on to tight end. Also, there's not a lot of, I think, drama here with these picks. I have TJ Hawkinson. I have James Mitchell, who I would have as the number 2 when he's healthy. And then I kept Brock Wright. I didn't, and I cut Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess costs $0 to cut. So I would rather keep the guy who's been on the squad for a year already than him. I don't know that there is that high of an upside with Devin Funchess. He seems kind of like a guy that's bouncing around from team to team.
For a reason, again.
Yeah. One pride. I don't think that Levis is raw, but I also don't think he's the kind of player that you just bring into the NFL and just start day one. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, and maybe this season at Kentucky, he shows that he is completely capable of stepping into an NFL franchise, and playing from week 1. But I think most rookies would benefit from some amount of time adjusting to life in the NFL before they're asked to play.
Even Mahomes sat for a while, didn't he?
He sat for all. He sat for all but the last game of his rookie season, and then has played every game since, I believe. So, all right, moving on to there's Kabinda. So moving on to the offensive line, I would keep, unsurprisingly, Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, Vaitai, and Sewell as from left tackle to right tackle. And then as the backups, I would keep Evan Brown because he was amazing stepping in for Frank Ragnow last season. Dan Skipper and Matt Nelson as the backup tackles. And then, unfortunately, I would let everyone else go. So I do think that there is some space here to make this offensive line even better than it is. Jackson got his first Pro Bowl this last season. Congratulations. That's an award that I think a lot of players actively strive for. I'm not as big of a fan on Vaitai as other people in the Lions fandom community seem to be. You're paying him $8 million a season. I believe he's the 6th highest paid Lion currently. And as you and I have talked about before, like guard is a position that you can upgrade, whether that's in free agency or the draft. So I think that there are opportunities to get cheaper and potentially better at that position. At this point in the season, I don't think that it's likely that he's going to be traded or cut. And if you do designate him a post June 1 cut after the season, you will only be out $1 million, and you will or 1.7, and you will save $7 million on your 2023 cap space. And I think that's probably more than I would rather have the $7 million than having him on the team. And that's my offense.
The only thing that I'm thinking on that is it great to have $7 million? Absolutely. What are we going to use that for? If we don't spend it, if we're not getting a free agent or something like that, do we actually gain much?
So what I would here's my argument for why
convert it into a signing bonus for somebody and start making down the road easier.
So that's one thing you could do, right? So I would label that move as something like you can do because you have salary cap flexibility. So if you have a healthy cap, then you can take advantage of opportunities that maybe other teams aren't available to take advantage of. And so right now, what the Lions seem to be doing is really maintaining the roster that they've had largely for the last 2 seasons, and then keeping role players on like low value contracts, which is good. And they're not going out and making splashy signings in free agency, I think largely to help with the cap flexibility. So I don't think moving on from one player is blowing up the offensive line. Like, if they were to, they certainly could upgrade at several of the backup offensive lineman positions, most likely with rookies or guys not coming off of prove-it deals or established veterans, guys that I think play better than Matt Nelson and Dan Skipper. But I think that the core of this line is Decker, Ragnow, Sewell. Sewell is on a rookie deal, but both Decker, who's in the first year of his extension, and Ragnow, whose first year of his extension will hit next season, those guys are getting more expensive. I'm not at all saying get rid of those players, but I am saying like those guys are going to eat up more of your cap. So you need to find a way to save some money, and then you're going to need to make some sacrifice somewhere. You cannot just, if the Lions are simply unwilling to move on from players who are making money on the current roster, this team stagnates because you don't upgrade anywhere, and you just keep end up spending more money. So you need to figure out where you can get better and how you can do so for as cheaply as possible. And I think that guard is probably one of those positions there's going to be an opportunity to do that. So you should consider it. But let's move to the defense. So on the defense here, I've got them keeping Aiden Hutchinson, shockingly, Romeo Okwara, who I do think is probably going to end up on the PUP list to start the season. So will Jamison Williams, so will James Mitchell. So like I think that these are roster spots that you're going to see go to other players, and they're going to be given a chance to be backups or contribute on special teams or what have you. So I have Hutchinson, Okwara, who would be my starting defensive ends. Charles Harris, Julian Okwara, James Houston, who we drafted late this last year, and Kaminsky. So I have 6 DNs, which is probably a little heavy, but they really fought. They gave up some waiver claims in order to go out and get Kaminsky. So I don't know that they would do that just to have a preseason addition to the team. Houston, I think, is going to be
with Funchess though too, potentially.
Well, I mean, they gave up. I mean, I don't think they even claimed him off waivers. They just signed him off a practice squad.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So, the Lions, I don't believe, have cut any of their rookies before the season yet. Maybe this is the year. I don't think that it is. Julian Aquara, I've heard that they've experimented with putting him at different positions on the defense. So I think that they're probably going to give him an opportunity to demonstrate whether or not that'll take with him. So I think that, he's going to be listed as an edge or what have you, whether that's where he ends up playing or not. On the interior, I've got, shockingly, I don't think much difference. I've got Brockers, Onwuzurike, McNeil, and Pascal, who I've listed as a D tackle here, even though I think that it's as likely that he lines up somewhere between D end and D tackle, depending on what they want to do and on that particular play.
Some of those guys are so athletic; they can play inside or outside. They're fast. They're strong. They got good mass to them.
And I've heard the coaches say you can line Hutchinson up inside. So I mean, the way that I look at it is I'm really keeping I have a combination of 10 players, most of whom can either play inside or outside, or about half and half. So
you almost have to these days because the offenses are so good that you really need to confuse them as much as possible, show them different looks, make them guess what I've never seen this lineup before or this setup, and make them wonder, because otherwise the offenses they just snap and they just go. And if you're not making them wonder, making that quarterback spend a half a second, watching somebody that maybe he wouldn't have watched otherwise, because now they're in a new spot and they got to figure out what's going on. You have to. The offenses are just too good and too fast.
Yeah, positional versatility is going to be just continue, I think, to have a higher and higher premium put on it in the NFL in general.
Yeah.
And staying on the top of that wave is probably going to be a really smart investment for any NFL team, hopefully the Lions.
Yeah.
So moving on to linebacker, I've got Board, Rodriguez, Anzalone, Barnes, and Sean Dion Hamilton, who was my fifth guy and the 52nd dude on the roster for me.
Yeah.
So I watched the Ravens play games. Chris Board didn't get a ton of run, with the Ravens, but I like him. He's one of the few guys they decided to add to the team in free agency. I like, what Rodriguez, brings is the type of player that he is. Now they're going to have to prove it. Right. But I guess this is more I don't want to go into the season with Alex Anzalone being the primary linebacker on this team. I don't know that does anybody any favors. Derek Barnes, I think, is going to be given the opportunity to keep learning, keep growing, getting better as a linebacker. And so I want him to get some plays as well. But I think that this might as well, if there's any position grouping on the team, this is the 52 card pickup position. I don't really have any idea who's going to win the camp battle for these starting spots.
Yeah.
Moving on to the secondary, I've got the cornerback grouping, and I kind of took some liberties with the back seven here, just FYI. I've got the starting corners being Okudah, Araraway, and Hughes. And then the backups being Jerry Jacobs, AJ Parker, and Chase Lucas, the 7th round rookie, who I think is probably on this team as a special teamer.
Yeah.
More so than a backup cornerback. But, there's a reason they actually spent draft picks on these guys and didn't bring them in as undrafted free agents or what have you. So you're probably one pride. It's likely that I think 3 quarterbacks go off the board in this upcoming class pretty quickly. So you may need to trade up in order to get the one that you quote unquote want, depending on how high you have to move up. And that's always going to be the key. And then in safety, I've got Walker and Deshaun Elliott. who I think are probably the starters week 1. But I do think that Kirby Joseph will be starting before the end of the season. And then I have Melifonwu listed as a safety.
Yeah,
and then I have
in both spots here, safety and corner. He's pretty versatile.
And so like if he can play both positions, great. Like what a terrible thing, if you drafted a backup corner and safety with a 3rd round pick that you got for Kenny Golladay, right? So
yeah.
And then I had CJ Moore as my 5th quote unquote safety because I had to put another player on this roster. Will Harris, see ya. Like it cost them nothing in order to get rid of Will Harris, and he was the most maligned person in that secondary grouping last season. I don't know how he's on the team. So Walker
he may not make that roster.
Right. Walker, Elliott, Joseph Melifonwu, and Moore are my safeties. And then for my specialists, I have Jack Fox, clearly. Yeah. I have Siebert over Riley, I think is the guy's name. Riley Patterson. So either of those guys, it doesn't matter to me. I just picked Siebert because I was aware of him being on the team last season. And then the long snapper being Scott Daly. So that's my 53. So like, I think. Oh, you're right. You're right, Funky. That was yes, you're right. That was the 3rd rounder from the Stafford trade, not from the Kenny Golladay comp picks. Good catch, man. He had it right there too. He was like, I'm gonna get that in. I know that wasn't the Golladay pick. So that's my if I was going to war week 1 with the Eagles, that's the grouping of Lions that I would have out there. And there's some room on there for some wiggle room. I have Williams, Mitchell, and Aquara all on the PUP list to start the season. There are, Jamal Williams is likely on the roster as well, so I'm probably wrong there. And then like some of these, like the 52nd or 53rd guys like Sean Dion Hamilton or CJ Moore, maybe they don't make the roster and it's somebody else that they either picked up or wanted to give an opportunity to, what have you. So, but I think that like 45 to 48 of these guys are probably pretty solid.
Yeah. And that like 48 to 53, there tends to be a little bit of turnover when, one of the other 31 teams cuts somebody that just misses theirs, but is just better than ours. So that,
right.
My guess is that we'll have probably 4 that are not on our team right now from maybe even a late free agency thing. Maybe there's somebody still waiting on free agency that doesn't have a contract that we might be able to get, or a cut, either a cap cut or a not training camp, but a preseason cut. Like we'll have a couple people that are not really on our radar right now.
Yeah, that's always interesting how that the pare down to the 53-man roster, I believe, happens at the end of August. And then there will be kind of like a dust settling approach for these rosters where teams kind of.
I don't think that's right, is it? Don't they don't go down to 53 until after the last preseason game, right?
I think I read something somewhere that said August 31st was the deadline to cut down to 53.
Oh, interesting.
But let me Google it right now. 2022 NFL.
We have more information at our fingertips than any other time in human history. There's no reason we can't find it quickly, right?
Right.
Cue awkward silence.
The cuts will take place in 3 different waves that will drop teams from 90 players to 53. Tuesday, August 16th, 90 to 85. Tuesday, August 23rd, 85 to 80. And then it cuts off naturally right on the most important sign. And then Tuesday, August 30th, 80 to 53. So this was posted by Brian Miller from Fansided 1 month ago. So I would say the end of August, we will have a very good idea of what this team is going to look like for this upcoming season. The goof. Any concern that Goof is our long? I think he means Goff, right? That O could be an F.
You know what? I think they're both right.
Yeah, that's true. Like that's the easy joke to make, right? So that's right there.
Yeah,
that's some pretty low hanging fruit. But like, I would certainly have concerns if Jared Goff was the quarterback of this team for, like, let's say this upcoming season and the 2 more that's left on his deal after it. Yeah, absolutely. And the question that I've been asking myself lately when it comes to like the Lions roster is, what does this player do that's elite? And I don't know that I can answer that question for every player on this roster. Some of them are pretty obvious, like Jamison Williams, like it's his speed, like he has elite speed, and like DeAndre Swift, like what's his best trait? Like I think it's him catching the ball out of the backfield and being kind of this dual threat running back that maybe doesn't have 1,000 yards on the ground, but if you give him between like the ground and the air has 1,500 all-purpose yards. Like I think that like that's the thing that he brings. Like TJ Hawkinson, is he a great inline blocker? No, probably not. Like, but is he effectively like a big wide receiver that you could put at the tight end position? Yeah, and that's valuable, So,
to your point, one of the things that in our leadership team where I work, we did a couple of book studies, and we're always doing a book study of some sort. But one of the books that I read was a book written by a couple former executives at Amazon, and talking about their kind of culture and how they build it and their leadership. And one of the things that they talked about was the concept of a bar raiser. When you go into hiring, how does this person raise the bar? You don't want to just settle for the same as what you got. You always want to get better. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about is, all right, when we're looking at free agent trades, when we're looking at drafts, when we're looking at re-signings, how does, what is this person going to do to raise the bar and make us better? And some of these people, you're like, they don't. So do we really want to put money into someone that's not going to make us take, even if it's a small step, some sort of step in a better direction, and get us better in something? It doesn't have to be, it just needs to be something. Maybe a little bit faster, maybe a little bit better hands, maybe a little bit smarter decision making. Like something just needs to be better. And I don't think, and I think this goes for both in sports and just in what I would call a normal job. You don't want to just settle and have the same as everybody else. Your lateral movement is usually not a good thing for teams. So take a step forward, right?
Right. So I did some checking here on ESPN, and all 3 preseason games will be finished before the end of August. So August 30th, you will have gotten the entire preseason in before you make your final roster cuts. So, so somewhere between the preseason and week 1, So,
all right, Drew, I've got a question for the the chat crew here.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this, and I know this isn't really up your alley.
I love that you're surprising with me right at the end of our show.
Oh, yeah, right.
I love surprises.
So one of the things that seems to be the topic du jour for all the different Lions streamers and posters and all that kind of stuff is some sort of Goff episode, talking about why they do or do not believe Goff is the future and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So my question to the comment crew is, we've never really done this is the Goff episode. We've talked about him in the past, but not like really going into the analytics. Should we do that next week? Should we talk all Goff the whole time? Well, I mean, obviously we'll do some Q&A at the beginning and whatnot, but do we want to go into why we do or do not want Goff?
You're asking them if they want us to talk about Jared Goff?
Yeah, just having a Goff-centric episode. That's what everybody else is doing. Like the obligatory Goff episode is what we should call it.
We should call it that. It seems. I think One Pride says 100%. I think that was in reference to your question.
Yeah. About Funky, Luke G. What do you think, guys?
If Rumble's still, I know Rumble's on vacation, I believe still, so he may be distracted from listening as intently as he would normally listen.
Yes.
So, well, you know what happens if you're the only person that votes anyway, you probably get your way, right? So
that's 100%.
Yeah. Going once.
Yeah.
Going twice. Sold to One Pride with his 100% bid. Wait, Funky says not all golf, man. I mean, you can do a solid segment on him, but not the whole show. Okay, that sounds fine. That seems like a nice compromise.
So. Yeah, we kind of decided the format would be like the first half or a third would be kind of like just interacting, Q&A, whatever the most recent news is or topics are, and then kind of get into a main topic. So he'd just be our main topic.
Yeah. So
more than just golf. God, I'd hate my life.
Oh, if you guys have thoughts about what you would like, or you want to make some points about next week's episode and Jared Goff, feel free and please do email us at casualgmpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll get them on the air. Of course, we will also take questions, in the chat during the episode. There's more people in the chat than the WNBA game. So.
One Pride. That's brutal. I love it.
That's very mean, but kind of true. So very funny. Yep. Feel free to, if you have some points that you want to make ahead of time, feel free to send us an email. If you see me in any of the Woodward Sports or other chat rooms that I've happened to be in, feel free to let me know there. And if not, we'd love to have you guys show up next week. Tuesdays at 7 Eastern. We'll be streaming live. And if you guys have questions then, please drop them in the chat. We will, Mike, give them our take on Jared Goff? Is that what's happening?
Yep, the hows and the whys. So, there's been a few passionate fans on both sides. We'll kind of talk about what we think and why, and the analytics behind it, not just opinion, but the actual numbers. And I think that'll be a lot of fun.
So, Mike, I will say that if we're going to do this, I'm probably going to go pretty hard at it. So,
no. And so,
it won't be the whole show, but we will have time dedicated to getting these points in.
If to your point, if anybody has anything, spoiler alert, it's probably not going to be positive on the golf side. So if you have any things that you want to throw in there that we can kind of, as devil's advocate type points, let us know. Mm-hmm. We can make sure, what I want to do is I want to come to this with our reasoning laid out, almost like this is a jury, right? The people of the jury, the comment crew.
Mm-hmm.
This is our, this is why we believe Goff is not the answer.
And that is the point of view that I will be coming from, is that he is certainly not the answer.
So we'll come with some devil's advocate. Well, but what about this, Drew? And then we'll kind of have some of that kind of stuff. But anything that you guys have as well will be welcome. I think it'll be a lot of fun, especially if it's not something we already thought of.
Oh, yeah.
We on our feet. Love it.
We're not so smart that we think that we've covered all the bases. So please make sure, add to the program, get your 2 cents in.
Yeah, I am better looking than I am smart. So that's not good. Never mind.
Funky, yeah. Pride's 100% probably was aimed at your comment, but we've already considered it a vote. So
yeah.
Plus, Mike desperately has been wanting to do this behind the scenes for a while, so we're going to give him his way. Okay.
Yes.
Nice. Well, Mike, it's always good to see you. Good points today. I'm glad we agreed on most of the roster, and I will talk to you next week, man.
Sounds good. Take care, guys. We'll see you, Drew.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.